All right, so Anthony, let's talk about some of the major takeaways regarding climate change. How are people in Northern California feeling, people in Southern California and in the Central Valley feeling about the threat of wildfire based on your numbers and the polls?
Hey there, Kenny. Great to talk to you. So the big takeaway concerning wildfires, which I should say right at the top, is a top concern for most Californians, is that a lot of people feel like they're at risk for them. A lot of folks feel, almost a third, feel like they're at very high risk. Some others feel like they're at a somewhat high risk. And then you look at that, breaking it down, especially by people who live in more rural areas. They feel especially like they're going to be more at risk, more so than folks in suburbs and cities. So that's one of the big takeaways concerning wildfires. But the other thing I would show you more generally, Kenny, is that when you look at the overall impact of climate change generally, that is also something that a majority of Californians feel like is having an impact on the state.
Anthony, where do people feel the most threat of extreme weather and drought based on your poll?
Yeah, that's a great question, Kenny, because it's not just wildfires that are a concern for so many Californians. When you look at, first of all, drought, if people feel like they're at high risk being affected by that, you see big numbers all throughout the state. In the Bay Area, almost 8 in 10 people feel like they're experiencing or going to be affected by it. In Northern California as well, over 7 in 10. And again, those high numbers throughout the state. Then you look more broadly at the risk of extreme weather. Have you felt it? Have you experienced it? And there again, all throughout the state, have you experienced it? Yeah, in Northern California, in the Bay Area, in Central California, just about everywhere, you find these large numbers of people feeling like it has affected their region, Kenny.
And how are Californians feeling the impact of climate change?
Yeah, so this gets to the broader picture. A lot of folks feeling like whether it's drought, wildfires, extreme weather generally, that in our polling we find people connect that to the issue of climate change. And certainly in California, as elsewhere in the country, they really do think that they're feeling that effect. First of all, is it an important issue? A majority say yes. Now, there's some partisan splits on that, particularly for Democrats, less so for Republicans. But then you also look at whether people think generally that it's having an impact on the state. And there, if you add up the folks who feel like it's having a lot of impact at 46, and then some impact, there again, you get a large number who say it's having an impact. And this really squares with what we're seeing more generally in public opinion, which is that people do argue and disagree over what, if anything, needs to be done about the effects of climate change. But you do see people across the board, including across partisan lines, often saying that it's at least having some kind of an impact, Kenny.
And Anthony, who supports state efforts to do things about climate change based on these polls?
Yeah, now here's where what people are feeling, what they're experiencing, then can it manifest itself? Does it into policy views? And here, when we look at, first of all, whether climate change is an important issue and whether or not it is something that California can do something about, you see some partisan splits. You see a 73% total folks who support in general the state doing something about trying to combat climate change. And then Democrats, large numbers of independents there in California, and that does make up the bulk of California voters anyhow. They feel like they support that, but then even half of Republicans too. So here's a place where we see things cutting across at least some of those partisan lines as people generally feel the effects of climate change, say that they feel the effects of extreme weather, and then in turn support policies from the state that might try to mitigate those effects, Kenny.
Anthony, can you talk a little bit about the polling, when you guys decided to do this? I'm trying to get a sense of what these numbers may have looked like 10 years ago and 20 years ago.
One of the things that generally is the case when we look at climate change and public opinion polling is that more folks have said that they think that it is happening, but there is still disagreement on what, if anything, can be done and should be done about it. But in national polling, you see very large numbers that feel that it's occurring, and then you see more splits. Often they hew to partisan lines, where you see more splits with people saying, well, is it people, is it humankind contributing to climate change, or is it a natural occurrence? Is it the cycle of weather patterns? Those splits we still do see in the national polling, but the idea that it is happening, that certainly we see very large numbers, over 9 and 10 in some form, feel like it is nationwide. And certainly the California numbers reflect that, as so many people feel like it's occurring and they locally are feeling the effects.